Right now, somewhere in Australia, a person on $26.44 an hour is standing in the servo at 9 p.m, doing maths in their head before they buy a meat pie. And right now, somewhere else in this country, a person earning $350,000 a year is lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why they still feel skint. Both of those people are real. Both of them exist today, in 2026. So in the next few minutes, we're climbing the entire Australian pay ladder, from the minimum wage all the way up to the top 1%. Real take-home pay, real tax, real rent, real groceries, and the honest lifestyle each income actually buys you, not the one Instagram tells you it buys you. Stick with me, because I promise you'll know exactly where you sit by the end of this, and more importantly, what to do about it. Let's start at the bottom. As of the 1st of July, the national minimum wage sits at $26.44 an hour. That works out to $1,004.90 a week before tax, or a bit over $52,000 a year for someone working full-time. After tax, you're taking home somewhere around $45,000. Call it $1,700 a fortnight landing in your account. Now picture what that actually buys you. In most capital cities, a one-bedroom unit is chewing through $600 to $700 a week in rent. In Sydney, median rents have pushed past $800. That's more than half your take-home pay gone before you've bought a single Weet-Bix. Add groceries for one person, call it $150 a week if you're being careful, then power, phone, transport and insurance on top, and there's barely anything left over. Saving feels like a joke. Getting ahead feels like something that happens to other people. Here's the truth though. If you're on this wage, you're not failing. You're doing honest work in a system where wages simply haven't kept pace with rent and groceries. Millions of Australians are in exactly this spot, showing up every single day and still going backwards. That's not a personal failure, that's a structural one. Step up to $60,000 a year, and you're now sitting close to where a huge chunk of working Australians actually land, right around the middle of the pack. After tax, $60,000 leaves you with roughly $50,000 a year, or about $1,900 a fortnight. Life here is still a grind, but there's a little more room to move. Maybe an extra $100 a week you could put towards savings or knocking down debt. You're probably sharing a rental with a housemate, driving something a few years old, and cooking most nights instead of getting Uber Eats. Here's the bit most people miss. This is actually where financial momentum starts. Even $50 a week tipped into a low-cost index fund, left alone for 10 or 15 years, turns into real money through compound growth. The Australians who eventually break out of this bracket aren't always the ones who land a huge pay rise. They're the ones who quietly start making their money work as hard as they do. Jump to $80,000 and something genuinely shifts. After tax, you're taking home somewhere around $64,000, about $2,450 a fortnight. At this level, you can usually rent a decent place solo outside of Sydney. You can top up your super beyond the compulsory contributions. You can build an emergency fund without eating 2-minute noodles for a month straight. $80,000 also puts you ahead of the majority of Australian taxpayers. But here's the trap. This is exactly the income where lifestyle creep sneaks in. New car on finance, nicer apartment, eating out 4 nights a week because you can finally afford it. Then 6 months later, you're wondering why you still feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck. The people who actually get ahead at $80,000 are the ones who keep their spending at the $60,000 level and invest the difference. Do the maths, that gap invested consistently can grow into hundreds of thousands of dollars over 15 years through compounding. That's the payoff for discipline. And the flip side, the lifestyle creep, is the quiet cost of not paying attention. Now the big one, $100,000. For decades, this was the number that meant you'd made it in Australia.
Here's the reality in 2026. $100,000 puts you in roughly the top 30% of individual taxpayers, genuinely solid. After tax, you're looking at around $77,000, or close to $3,000 a fortnight. That's real money, but in Sydney or Melbourne, where median rents can run $600 to $800 a week, housing is still swallowing a huge slice of it. A six-figure salary used to mean you could save a house deposit in a few short years. These days, with median house prices in Sydney sitting well above $1.5 million, buying property solo, without family help, is a genuine uphill battle even on this income. The $100,000 dream isn't dead, it's just been quietly downgraded from wealth-building salary to comfortable survival salary in the big cities, and that shift happened faster than most people clocked. Push up to around $133,000, and you've stepped into roughly the top 17% of taxpayers.
After tax, that's close to $100,000 in your pocket, or about $3,800 a fortnight. Life here genuinely opens up. You can rent well, save consistently, invest with purpose, and still enjoy your weekends without guilt. The biggest danger at this level isn't money, it's comparison. You start hanging around people earning $200,000 or $300,000, and suddenly your own income feels small. It isn't. You're out-earning the vast majority of the country. Stay disciplined here, and this is genuinely a life-changing income bracket. At $180,000, you're in roughly the top 8% of Australian earners. After tax, you're taking home around $129,000, call it $4,900 a fortnight. Your effective tax rate is climbing here. You'll feel it, but your disposable income is strong. You can max out concessional super contributions, get into property or shares, and start building genuine passive income on the side. This income is really about options: where you live, how you work, how aggressively you build wealth. But plenty of people on $180,000 still live paycheck to paycheck. A big Sydney mortgage, 2 car loans, private school fees, and suddenly even this income feels tight. The income was never the problem, the commitments were. That's a lesson a lot of people learn later than they'd like. At $250,000, take-home pay drops to roughly $166,000, with somewhere around $83,000 going to tax and Medicare. Every extra dollar above the top threshold is taxed heavily once you add the Medicare levy on top. Nearly half of it heads straight to the tax office. This is where smart tax strategy starts to matter: salary sacrificing into super, sensible structures, making the most of legitimate deductions. If you're disciplined, financial independence within 10 to 15 years is genuinely on the table at this income level. And then there's the top 1%, which now starts at around $419,000. After tax, that leaves roughly $250,000 in hand, with well over $160,000 going to tax and Medicare. At this level, the real currency isn't money, it's time. The question stops being, can I afford this, and becomes, is this worth my attention? The risk here is complacency, assuming the income lasts forever and spending like it will. Careers change, industries shift, health isn't guaranteed. The sharpest people at this level are the ones quietly converting active income into assets that keep paying out long after the paychecks stop. So here's the actual lesson underneath all of this. Someone earning $80,000 who saves half of it will outbuild the wealth of someone earning $200,000 who spends every cent. It was never only about the number on your payslip. It's about the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and giving that gap time to compound. Wherever you sit on this ladder right now, the single most powerful move you can make is widening that gap just a little, starting this week. That gap is where financial freedom actually lives. If this changed the way you look at your own income, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Catch you in the next one.